Hey, you guys, gals, and bums, and welcome back to A Few Bad Men. I thought we needed a little vacation. It's cold where I am, so we're going to take this episode to sunny LA. And we're going to talk about a man who used moxie and muscle to ascend to the top of LA's underworld. He survived 11 attempts on his life, but died an old man peacefully in bed. He was Hollywood's gangster. I'm talking about Mickey Cohen. We had the pleasure of having Mickey here tonight with us to help tell his story. Say hello to the people, Mick.
Hello, A Few Bad Men. Thanks for having me, boss man.
Welcome, Mickey. I heard you were a hell of a gangster back in your day.
I have killed no man that, in the first place, didn't deserve killing.
That's always a good thing, Mick. Hey, can you hold on while I handle some business? All right. So, hey, if you're new here and you want to be part of something big, we're setting up to take over this YouTube racket, and we could use a guy or a gal like you on our team. But you got to make your bones first, so we know we can trust you. You got to click that subscribe button. That's the only way you can become an official AFBM member. All right. I also want to say thanks to all the new subscribers and the new members. Welcome. Okay. Make sure you break that thumb too. Also, I'm finally happy with the design, and thanks to the guy in the comment who reminded me, I now have the new Shots Rang Out t-shirts available on the merch store. All right, I even made a special one for all my malls out there. All right, you can't forget about the ladies, right? Also, I got some mugs and some new things up there, so check it out if you haven't been there in a while. All right, the link is in the description. All right, I talked enough. Maya Harris Cohen was born on September 4th, 1913, to Max and Fannie Cohen in Brownsville, Brooklyn. The last of 6 children born to the young couple who made their way to the U.S. from Russia. His father, Max, was in the fish import business, but Mickey had no memories of him because he died when Mickey was only 2 months old. When Mickey was 2 years old, his mother left the 4 older children in Brooklyn and moved with Mickey and his 4-year-old sister, Lillian, to L.A. She moved the family to Boyle Heights, the biggest Jewish community west of Chicago. It was the West Coast version of the Lower East Side, except with sun and palm trees instead of tenements. The main street in the neighborhood was coincidentally called Brooklyn Avenue. Now, this was the main strip where shops and restaurants catered to the Jewish residents. In Boyle Heights, people spoke Yiddish, and observant Jews could be seen in their traditional garb. Fannie rented a room in a 2-story stucco building at 131 North Breed Street. After she opened a small store, she sent for her remaining children.
We always had food on the table, and Ma kept us in good clothes.
She looked the other way when her 2 older sons put a still in a small drugstore they opened with a licensed pharmacist. The 2 older boys also got into the newspaper racket. Now, the newspaper business was not like it is now, or even when I was growing up. This is before radio, TV, the internet, and even talking movies. The newspaper had a monopoly on information, but there was a lot of competition in the business, and the newspaper owners had no problem hiring tough guys to get their newspaper sold. Every day, Mickey's brothers would drop him off at Brooklyn and Soto, where he would sit on a stack of papers until someone came to pick him up. Mickey's brother, Harry, was probably the biggest influence on the youngster. Harry had stayed back in Brooklyn when his mother moved Mickey to L.A., and he brought his Brooklyn mentality with him to L.A. It was Harry who introduced Mickey to gambling and bootlegging and things like that. He used to take Mickey with him to all-night games. He would tell him to go sleep in the car. He also taught him how to make gin. All this nightlife at an early age was not good for Mickey. He stayed in the 1st grade for a year and a half. He missed so much school that he was illiterate and couldn't count past 5 until he was late in his 20s. With no father and a busy mother, the streets of LA raised Mickey. He spent his days in pool halls and delivering bootleg liquor. He was still a child. He had his first arrest at 8 when he dropped a plate of hot food onto an officer who had raided the gin mill his brother had set up. He was taken to juvenile hall and charged with bootlegging. Now, this has got to be a record for the youngest person to be charged with bootlegging ever. If you can find something better than this, let me know. All right. Sam, Mickey's other brother, tried to get him to straighten out. He enrolled Mickey into an Orthodox Jewish Hebrew school. But it only took a half an hour for Mickey to smack another kid in the mouth, and he was expelled. After being caught with a crate of candy that he had stolen from a factory, he was sent to Alvarado Special, a reform school. Then Mickey was caught by police after trying to hold up a movie theater box office with a baseball bat, and he was sent to an even tougher reform school. He was still only 10 years old. But none of this deterred Mickey. He began selling newspapers and would beat up any kid who tried to take his corners. His brother Sam got him a job at a dress factory running errands. The owner's wife took a shine to young Mickey, and he was introduced to Abe Roth, a boxing referee, and he volunteered to be his mentor in the Big Brother program. He took Mickey to the boxing gym. By this time he was 11, and he was fighting 3-round amateur bouts around LA. He would fight on the corners by day and in the ring by night. He rarely lost. At 13, he won the American Legion Newsboy Championship flyweight division. Mickey loved boxing, and he was good at it, but he loved the streets more, and he was better at that. Mickey was always looking for a fast buck. He hustled candy, newspapers, and sodas. And when the Olympic Games came to LA in 1924, he sold counterfeit tickets. Every penny, nickel, and quarter got him closer to his goal of getting out of poverty. He was now able to buy himself the things his mother could never afford. By the time Mickey was 12, he had a bankroll of 2 bills. When his mother found it, she thought he must have robbed a bank. Money meant everything to Mickey. Money brought material things, but it also brought respect and power. His motto was simple: anything to make a buck. When he was 15, Mickey told his mother, who had since remarried, that he was going to the beach. But instead, he ran away from home. He hitchhiked and rode trains with the hobos. He finally made it to Cleveland, where his older brother Harry had moved to. At this time, during Prohibition, Cleveland was a town full of gangsters. Shiploads of illegal booze came in across Lake Erie from Canada. By the late to early 30s, Mo Dalitz, Louis Rothkopf, Morris Kleinman, and Samuel Trucker controlled the booze and gambling in Cleveland. These guys were part of the new National Crime Syndicate, created by a combination of Italian and Jewish gangsters who agreed that working together instead of being at odds was better for business. Mickey immediately jumped into Cleveland's boxing world. There he was introduced to Cleveland's underworld. And like most big cities at this time, they were one and the same. At this time, Morris Kleinman, a former boxer, ran the boxing racket. He recognized Mickey's talent and sent him to New York to be trained. He was still only 16 when he arrived in Manhattan and started to work out at Stillman's gym at 919 West 54th Street. The gym was run by the syndicate, and it was operated by Lou Stillman, a former detective who always had a .38 tucked in his waist. Mickey began to get introduced to all the big shots around Madison Square Garden, and he was billed as the California Wildcat, the featherweight with the Dempsey punch. Like other Jewish boxers of his time, Mickey wore blue satin trunks with the Star of David embroidered on the left leg. He fought a few contenders on the underbill of some big fights, but for some reason, Mickey became disillusioned with the sport and returned to Cleveland, but the big city had rubbed off on him. The way the gangsters dressed and carried themselves left a huge imprint on him. It was back in Cleveland where Mickey got introduced to guns. It became an obsession. The gun was his equalizer. It gave him power. But I'm gonna let Mickey tell you himself.
I felt like the king of the world when I whipped out that big .38. It made me feel like a guy who was 6'10".
He put together a crew and they began pulling off armed robberies, 2 to 3 a week. He was the youngest member of his crew, but he was its leader. His specialty was gambling joints, cafes, and brothels. The problem with this is, most of these joints were run by the gangsters. Mickey would say,
"At that time, I never had a thorough understanding of what the syndicate meant. I took it all as a joke."
"Until they threatened to clip you, huh, Mick? How'd you feel about that?"
I paid no attention to their statements and kept on heisting wherever I wanted.
One of Mickey's guys was the nephew of a big shot gangster in the Italian mob in Buffalo. He convinced Mickey to come in, and the older mafioso took a liking to Mickey, and he sent word to Cleveland that his nephew and the tough young Jewish kid were not to be harmed. When he got back to Cleveland, Mickey was sent for by the Italian bosses. They sat him down and they told him that he should lend his talents to them. And Mickey agreed. He was placed under Anthony Milano, and he was put on the payroll as an enforcer. But Mickey wasn't quite done with boxing completely. He fought a few fights where he got hurt and knocked out, and he finally ended his career fighting a guy who wouldn't stay down after 5 or 6 knockdowns. Mickey got frustrated and tried to bite his opponent's ear off. After 79 professional fights, Mickey hung up his gloves. Mickey's work with Anthony Milano included busting heads sometimes. One assignment he was given, he didn't know the fella, and he needed someone to point him out. The pointer pointed out the wrong guy, and Mickey gave an innocent man a severe beating in front of his wife. When Mickey found out, he beat the pointer up. Bad move. This guy was related to someone high up in the syndicate. He was seen as a hothead. And then it got worse. Him and 2 of his pals robbed a cafeteria in which a shootout broke out, and one of his accomplices was killed. He was arrested but acquitted. But the case brought so much heat on the mob that it was decided to send Mickey out of town. By the time Mickey got to Chicago, Al Capone was already gone. Part of his outfit was being run by Jake Guzik. Mickey was put to work under Joe Barron, a big-time Jewish gangster who ran a casino on the north side. He was set up with a louse book. Now a louse bookie is a guy who only deals with people who can only bet small amounts, dimes and nickels and quarters. He was also given a poker concession at the end of the night. One night, a man busted in and let everyone know that he was paid $20 to extort the casino. This guy was a real crash dummy. Mickey, tell him what you said next.
I'm going to give you a chance to prove that you are a tough guy. And I pulled my piece. In that time, I would have felt undressed if I wasn't carrying. He ran and I fired through the door. That's the last I saw of him.
Mickey was arrested for murder, but the outfit already had the fix in place for stuff like that. Mickey opened with his approval of the outfit, of course, a poker game in a loop. He got together a ragtag band of criminals, guys who were down on their luck during the Depression. All the guys were in need of food and a place to stay. After a while, the cost became too much for Mickey to handle, especially with Mickey's addiction to fashionable clothing. When the money started to get low, the gang started pulling off a few armed robberies, and Mickey even took a few fights. But he still couldn't make ends meet. So someone suggested to Mickey that they start a craps game, and he agreed. He got a broken down craps table, rented a spot, and set up shop. He borrowed money that he would have to pay back each night. He paid some cops to look the other way. He also brought in some mechanics. These guys specialized in loaded and shaved dice. Mickey ran a bust-out game. Anyone who played lost. The money started coming in. The only problem with this is craps was forbidden in the loop. Too many things could go wrong in a craps game. When drunk people start losing their money fast, they sometimes turn to violence. So the outfit forbade it in the loop. So when Jake Guzik heard some young punk had opened a craps game in the loop, he came up from Florida. Mickey was sent for, and at a meeting, Jake Guzik told him that the craps game must stop. Mickey brushed it off, and the dice kept rolling. So one night, while standing on Clark Street near his game, a black sedan slowed down, and shots rang out. A Tommy gun poked out of the back window, and a barrage of 45 rounds sprayed the corner. Mickey jumped into a pile of snow and was unharmed. But this was just intended to scare the young hoodlum. He was well liked by the bosses and was a valuable enforcer. But when Mickey caught an assault case after smashing a sugar dispenser over a man's head, the outfit's lawyers tried to get the case postponed, and it was. But the bosses decided that Mickey should return to the City of Angels. When Mickey got back to LA, he found that the rackets were being run by cops and stool pigeons, as Mickey put it. All the criminal activity was being run by the big shots, political big shots. A syndicate of gamblers and vice mongers had LA under wraps. They owned the police department. When Big Al tried to come out to LA and take over, they sent a team of crooked cops to his hotel, got him out of bed, and put him on a train back to Chicago. But the Italian mafia still had a presence. Jack Dragna was the mayor of the Italian neighborhood in Boyle Heights. Born in 1891, he moved to LA in 1910 from Corleone, Sicily. He brought the ways of the old country with him back to LA. He became the president of the Italian Protection League, which was really just a front for his Black Hand operation. Dragna was related to Tommy Three Fingers Brown Lucchese, who at this time was the underboss in the Gagliano family, now known as the Lucchese family. So he had some strong underworld connections. With the help of Johnny Roselli from Chicago, he started to move out of Boyle Heights and become a major player in LA. Back in New York, Thomas Dewey was wading waist deep into the cesspool that was the New York underworld. Because of him, Dutch Schultz was gone. Charlie Lucky was in Dannemora, and Lepke was on the lam. Gangster started disappearing, but not in the usual way. Meyer Lansky took off to Florida, Frank Costello headed for New Orleans, and Ben Siegel was sent to California to represent the syndicate out in LA. Cleveland ordered Mickey to get in contact with Siegel when he arrived in LA, but Mickey ignored the command and reunited with an old pal and went on a robbing spree. He rented an apartment in the Wilshire district, and he spent his money on the finest clothes from the most expensive stores and haberdasheries. He could be seen partying it up at every nightclub in the city. This was the life. Mickey didn't want to check in with Ben because that would be too much like work. But Mickey messed up when he robbed a bookie named Morris Orloff. It was told that Orloff was independent. Mickey got away with $23,000 and Orloff's ring, but it was a bad tip. Orloff worked for Jack Dragner and Johnny Roselli, and they were now under Siegel. Again, Mickey was sent for, and this time it was not a request. He was told to meet Siegel at the Hollywood YMCA. He was told to refer to him as Mr. Siegel and stand at attention.
He comes out naked with a towel around his waist and a smile on his face.
Benny got right to the point. He said, that was a nice piece of work, but I want you to do me a favor and kick back the $23,000 and the ring. Mickey said, I wouldn't kick back to my mother. Siegel stood there for a second with a confused look on his face. No one ever talked back to him. He was used to giving orders one time. Then he looked coldly at Mickey and said, you heard what I said. Mickey said, go fuck yourself, and strutted off. His handler chasing behind him, trying to stop him from committing suicide. But Ben didn't have him clipped. He flexed his muscle in a more refined way. Mickey was picked up by the cops and held for 8 days. When he was released, he was ordered to a lawyer's office. When he got there, he saw Johnny Roselli and Ben Siegel. Ben told him again to give back the money, that the money was syndicate money and he had to return it. Mickey caved in. He gave the money back, and his handler said, Mr. Siegel thinks you belong in a mental hospital. But Siegel recognized the kindred spirit. After all, this was the guy they called Bugsy, behind his back. Mickey was still doing his thing, robberies and such. He once raided the brothel of a famous Hollywood madam, Madam Francis. He said some of the girls took a liking to him. They were impressed by his clothes and the way he carried himself. And the big 45 on his waist didn't hurt. And Mickey added pimp to his criminal resume. Ben Siegel began to rub off on the young gangster. He admired the way he dressed and carried himself. He began to emulate him.
I found Benny to be a person with brilliant intelligence. He would look right through you, he demanded 1,000% respect, and he got it. He's been through it all. Muscle work, heists, killings.
Ben had big plans for LA, and Mickey was the guy he was going to use to get things done. Mickey was the hammer Ben was going to use to crack open the LA rackets. And that's where I got to leave you guys off today on Mickey Cohen, Part 1. Okay? So I want to give a shout out to my top earners this week. We got Gregory Johnson, Michael Redford, and Lucifer Gradziger. All right? Thank you guys so much. All right? Remember to check out the merch store. I think I might start calling it a haberdashery. I like that word. All right? Go check out the new Shots Rang Out merchandise. All right? Click that subscribe button and become a made guy or made gal. All right? So I want to thank Mickey Cohen for coming by to see us.
No problem. Thanks for having me, boss man.
My pleasure. Anything else you want to say?
Yeah, keep your nose clean and...
Hey, Mickey, that's my thing. Only I say that, all right? This has been A Few Bad Men. Keep your nose clean and don't take any wooden nickels. I see yous in the funnies. What's the matter with you, Mickey?